The champagne glass in my father's hand caught the afternoon light as he raised it high, his eyes glistening with tears of joy while making a toast to my sister Madison's unborn baby. The problem wasn't his emotion or even the beautiful speech about finally becoming a grandfather. The problem was the 7-month-old baby girl in my arms, his actual first grandchild, Isabella, who he'd never even met. I'm Olivia Ortiz, 32 years old, standing in my sister's perfectly manicured backyard in suburban Connecticut, watching my father give the grandfather speech I dreamed of hearing 7 months ago. The same father who taught me to ride a bike, who called me his little princess until Madison was born when I was 5, and then somehow I became invisible. My husband Carlos stood beside me, his jaw clenched so tight I worried he'd crack a tooth. He'd watched this favoritism play out for the 8 years we'd been together. But today was different. Today, our daughter was being erased in real time. Madison, resplendent in her designer maternity dress that cost more than our monthly mortgage, kept shooting me these little smirks between her fake tears of joy. She knew exactly what she was doing. The pattern wasn't new. When we were kids, Madison got the car for her 16th birthday, while I got a heartfelt card about learning the value of working. She got her college fully paid while I took out student loans that I'm still paying off. Her wedding looked like something from a luxury magazine with Dad spending $40,000, while Carlos and I had a backyard ceremony with a potluck dinner that Dad called charmingly modest. But this was different. This wasn't about money or things. This was about my daughter's existence. Dad was really warming up to his speech now, talking about how he'd waited so long for this moment, how he'd been collecting toys and books for his future grandchild, how Madison had made his dreams come true. The crowd of about 50 relatives and friends was eating it up, dabbing at their eyes, while Madison's husband Derek filmed everything for their social media. Madison had always been good at production value. The thing that hurt most was the nursery he described setting up in his house. The same nursery I'd tried to tell him about when Isabella was born. But somehow he'd always been busy when I called, always had something urgent when I tried to visit, always promised we'd get together soon. Now I understood why. Then came the moment that changed everything. Dad turned to me with that patronizing smile I knew so well and said those words that would haunt our family gatherings for years to come. He raised his glass toward me and asked loudly enough for everyone to hear when it would be my turn to make him a grandfather. The backyard went silent. Even the birds seemed to stop chirping. Carlos's hand found mine and squeezed. Isabella, bless her timing, chose that moment to blow a particularly loud raspberry, spraying strained carrots across my dress. A nervous titter ran through the crowd. I could have stayed quiet. The old Olivia would have just smiled and deflected, maybe made a joke about someday or soon, but holding my daughter, feeling her little fingers wrapped around my thumb, something in me finally snapped. 32 years of being the good daughter, the understanding sister, the one who never made waves. It all just crumbled. My voice came out steady and clear, carrying across the yard with a strength I didn't know I possessed. I told him it had been my turn 7 months ago when Isabella was born, that he'd been invited to the hospital, to her coming home party, to her christening, that his favorite daughter had thrown every invitation in the trash. Madison's face went through a transformation that her Botox couldn't quite hide. The smirk disappeared, replaced by wide-eyed innocence that she'd perfected over years of practice. But I saw the flash of panic in her eyes. She hadn't expected me to speak up. Not here, not now, not in front of everyone. Dad's champagne glass tilted, spilling golden liquid across his dress shoes. His face went from confusion to disbelief, to something that looked like the beginning of understanding. But Madison was already moving, already talking, already spinning the narrative with her silver tongue that had gotten her out of every consequence she'd ever faced. She called me dramatic, said I was making things up for attention, that I'd never sent any invitations. The gasps from the crowd fueled her performance, but what she didn't know was that I'd finally started keeping receipts. And that wasn't even the worst thing she'd hidden from him. 10 months before that disastrous toast, when I was 3 months pregnant, I'd told Madison about my pregnancy. We were having lunch at her favorite overpriced salad place, the one where she always insisted on meeting because she knew I couldn't really afford it, but would never admit it. I was nervous but excited, placing my hand on my still flat stomach as I shared the news that Carlos and I were expecting. Her reaction had seemed perfect at the time. She squealed, hugged me, even cried a little. She immediately volunteered to tell Dad, saying she knew exactly how to make it special for him. I should have known better. Madison never did anything that didn't benefit Madison. The weeks that followed were filled with strange absences. Family dinners happened without me. Always, when I supposedly had work conflicts I didn't remember mentioning. Dad's birthday celebration moved dates without anyone telling me until after. Sunday brunches at his country club became Madison-only affairs because, according to her, I'd said I was too tired from pregnancy. What really happened was a masterclass in manipulation. Madison told our relatives I was going through a difficult phase, that the pregnancy was making me antisocial, that I'd asked for space. She painted herself as the concerned sister, desperately trying to include me while respecting my wishes for distance. Our Aunt Helen later told me Madison would lower her voice conspiratorially and mention how worried she was about my mental state. The baby shower planning started when I was 5 months along. Madison insisted on organizing everything, said it was her gift to me. She created a Pinterest board, a group chat for planning, even a spreadsheet for RSVPs. Everything looked perfect on the surface. She'd send me screenshots of her discussing dates with Dad's side of the family, showing how involved she was making everyone. But the RSVPs never came. Dad was always suddenly busy on the proposed dates. Our uncles had last-minute business trips. Cousins had kids' recitals. The shower kept getting postponed, rescheduled, reorganized. Madison would sigh dramatically and promise to fix it, always with that concerned sister act that should have won her an Oscar. Carlos started noticing things first. He's always been more observant than me, less willing to give my family the benefit of the doubt. He pointed out how Madison's Botox appointments mysteriously conflicted with every attempt to include Dad in pregnancy updates, how her emergency work meetings always happened right when we were supposed to drop by Dad's house, how her phone was always conveniently dead when Dad tried to reach me through her. Before I continue, I'd love if you could hit that like button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Your support means everything to this channel. Thank you. Then there was Grandma Rose's will situation. Our grandmother had passed 2 years earlier, leaving her vast collection of vintage jewelry to the first granddaughter to have a daughter of her own. It was an old-fashioned stipulation that had made us both roll our eyes at the time, but Madison had convinced Dad to let her safeguard the collection at her house, claiming I'd told her I wasn't interested in old family heirlooms, that I'd called them outdated and dusty. Once Isabella was born and the inheritance technically became mine, Madison had already been selling pieces for months. The recipes were another issue entirely. Grandma Rose had run a successful catering business for 40 years, and her secret recipes were legendary in our Connecticut town. She'd left them to both Madison and me, expecting us to share them and maybe restart the business together. Instead, Madison started a food blog called Madison's Modern Kitchen, where she posted those exact recipes, claiming she'd developed them through years of experimentation. The funny thing was, Madison couldn't actually cook. The woman once burned water trying to make pasta, so when she attempted to make Grandma's famous 7-layer chocolate cake for a live stream, it collapsed like a chocolate landslide on camera. The video went viral, but not in the way she'd hoped. Someone had commented that it looked like a mudslide at a construction site, and that became the top comment with 12,000 likes. Everything might have continued like this indefinitely if I hadn't stopped by Madison's house unexpectedly one day when Isabella was 6 weeks old. I'd been driving by after a pediatrician appointment and thought I'd try once more to bridge the gap. Madison wasn't home, but her housekeeper Maria let me in to wait. Maria had always liked me better, probably because I actually knew her children's names. While waiting, I noticed Madison's trash can was overflowing in her home office. Being the helpful sister I'd always tried to be, I went to compress it down. That's when I saw it. Right on top, barely crumpled, was the invitation to Isabella's coming home party. the one I'd hand-delivered to Madison to give to Dad, the one with the little pink footprints and the photo of Isabella's perfect little face. But it wasn't just one invitation. As I pulled that one out, I found another beneath it, and another, the hospital announcement, the christening invitation, the professional photos I'd sent for Dad's office. All of them were there, thrown away like garbage, some still in their unopened envelopes. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone to document everything. This wasn't neglect or forgetfulness. This was deliberate, calculated erasure of my daughter from my father's life. The jewelry discovery happened by accident. Derek, Madison's husband, had innocently mentioned at a family barbecue how nice it was that Madison was selling some old jewelry to help fund their nursery. He showed me photos on his phone of the pieces she'd listed online, asking if I thought the prices were fair. My blood turned to ice when I recognized Grandma Rose's Art Deco engagement ring, the one worth $30,000 listed for $3,000 on a resale site. The collection was technically supposed to come to me once Isabella was born. 23 pieces of vintage and antique jewelry collected over Grandma's lifetime, each with a story, each with significance. But Madison had convinced Dad years earlier to let her safeguard them after Grandma's passing, claiming she had better security at her house. The emerald brooch from 1923 that Grandpa bought after his first successful business deal, the strand of pearls from their 25th anniversary, the diamond tennis bracelet she wore to my parents' wedding. Madison had been selling them off one by one, long before Isabella triggered the actual inheritance. What really burned was finding out she'd told Dad I'd said I didn't want any of it, that modern women didn't wear vintage jewelry. Me, who'd spent every Sunday as a child sitting at Grandma's vanity, carefully holding each piece as she told me its story. Me, who'd written my college thesis on the history of Art Deco jewelry design. Madison knew exactly how much those pieces meant to me, which is probably why destroying my connection to them felt so satisfying to her. The catering business situation was equally calculated. After Grandma passed, there'd been interest from several local restaurants in purchasing her recipes. We were supposed to decide together, but Madison told them I was too busy with my corporate job to care about a small family business. She sold 5 recipes to a chain restaurant for a fraction of their worth, then used the rest for her blog, adding insult to injury by barely modifying the names. But the blog itself was a comedy of errors. Madison might have had Grandma's recipes, but she had none of her technique. The infamous mudslide cake was just the beginning. Her attempt at Grandma's delicate macarons looked like colorful hockey pucks. The French onion soup somehow caught fire. The beef Wellington came out looking like something from a crime scene. Her followers started tuning in just to watch the disasters unfold. If you're enjoying this story and want to hear how everything unraveled for Madison, please take just a second to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. Your support truly helps me continue sharing these stories, and it means more than you know. Carlos's cousin Miguel, a software engineer with too much time on his hands, offered to do some digital digging. What he found was a goldmine of deception. Deleted emails where Madison explicitly told family members I didn't want them at my baby shower. Messages to my boss during my pregnancy, suggesting I'd mentioned wanting to quit after the baby. Even a fake Instagram account she'd created pretending to be me, posting about how exhausted and overwhelmed I was, how I needed space from family. The promotion I'd lost suddenly made sense. I'd been up for senior management, a position I'd worked toward for 5 years. But mysteriously, concerns arose about my commitment level right after I'd announced my pregnancy to Madison. My boss had received an anonymous tip that I was planning to be a stay-at-home mom. The typing pattern in the email Miguel recovered matched Madison's other messages perfectly, right down to her peculiar habit of using ellipses instead of periods. She'd even stolen catering contracts from me. I'd started taking small jobs on weekends using Grandma's recipes, with her permission before she passed. Madison undercut my prices by 40%, telling clients I'd recommended her because I was too busy. 3 wedding contracts, 2 corporate events, and a year's worth of monthly dinner parties. probably $50,000 in lost income while I was struggling with student loans and baby expenses. The evidence folder Carlos and I compiled grew thicker every day. Screenshots, emails, recordings from doorbell cameras showing Madison taking mail from our mailbox. Our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, bless her nosy heart, had documented everything because she thought Madison was having an affair with our mailman. She was disappointed to learn it was just theft, but happy to share her extensive surveillance footage. The turning point came when Madison accidentally sent me a text meant for her best friend Brittany. It read, "Olivia's here with that baby again, acting like anyone cares. Dad won't even know she exists until my kid is at least 5. I've made sure of that." She tried to recall it, sent 17 texts trying to explain it was about someone else, even claimed her phone had been hacked. But I had the screenshot, and it became the crown jewel in my collection of evidence. The funniest part was watching Madison's increasing paranoia. She started checking her trash before putting it out, installing cameras to see who came to her door, even hiring someone to check if her phone was tapped. The woman who'd spent years orchestrating my isolation was suddenly looking over her shoulder at every turn. The stress was affecting her appearance, too. Her Botox appointments increased, her hair started thinning, and she developed a nervous eye twitch that no amount of concealer could hide. Meanwhile, Isabella said her first word. It wasn't Mama or Dada. It was Pop Pop, the name I'd been teaching her for the grandfather she'd never met. I had it on video, this perfect moment of my daughter calling out for a grandfather who didn't know she existed. It broke my heart and steeled my resolve in equal measure. The family group chat discovery happened during Isabella's first fever. I was exhausted, scared, and desperately trying to reach Dad for advice because he'd always been calm in medical situations. Madison told me he was at his cabin with no cell service, except Derek accidentally let slip that they'd just been texting in the family group chat about plans for next weekend. That's when I learned about Family Forever, a group chat with 47 members that had been active for 2 years. 2 years of daily messages, photos, plans, and conversations I'd never been part of. Carlos helped me get access through his aunt who'd married into the family. What I found was heartbreaking and infuriating in equal measure. There were over 200 messages about Madison's pregnancy journey, ultrasound photos, nursery planning, name discussions, even a betting pool about the delivery date. During those same months, I'd been actually pregnant, actually going through everything they were discussing theoretically. While they debated whether Madison would have morning sickness, I was throwing up every morning alone. While they planned her baby shower, mine kept getting mysteriously postponed. Dad had asked about me exactly 3 times in 2 years of messages. Each time, Madison responded quickly. I was busy with work. I was going through something personal. I'd asked for space. I preferred to keep my distance. The family had created an entire narrative about me being cold, career-obsessed, and disconnected. My Uncle Tony had even written that he was proud of Madison for trying so hard with her difficult sister. The promotion sabotage went deeper than just one email. Madison had created an entire campaign over 6 months. She befriended someone in my company's HR department through a yoga class. She volunteered to help with our company's charity auction, getting FaceTime with senior management. All of it positioned her to plant seeds of doubt about my commitment while appearing to be the supportive sister. She told my boss she was concerned about me, that I'd confided I felt overwhelmed, that I'd mentioned maybe the promotion was too much with a baby coming. She did it all with that perfect Madison smile, the one that made people want to protect her, to take her side. My boss thought she was being helpful when she suggested I might want to reconsider the timing of taking on more responsibility. The catering business sabotage was equally methodical. She'd created professional-looking business cards with her name and Grandma's recipes. She attended the same networking events I did, but an hour earlier, introducing herself to all my potential clients. She even hired a professional photographer to take pictures of food she hadn't cooked, using them to create a portfolio that looked more professional than my homemade photos of actual dishes I'd prepared. But technology was Madison's weakness, and it became her downfall. She didn't understand that deleted emails weren't really gone. She didn't know that her fake Instagram account's IP address could be traced. She had no idea that modern cars track location data, proving she was at my mailbox when mail went missing. Every digital footprint she left became another piece of evidence in our growing case. Miguel found something else interesting. Madison had been researching grandparents' rights in Connecticut, specifically about whether grandparents could get visitation if they'd never met the child. She'd also looked up whether birth announcements were legally required. She was trying to figure out how long she could keep Isabella hidden from Dad before it became legally problematic. The answer, it turned out, was indefinitely, as long as no one told him the truth. Isabella's first word on video became something more than just a heartbreaking moment. It became evidence of what Madison had stolen from my father. The relationship with his first grandchild, 7 months of firsts, of moments that could never be recaptured. When I showed the video to Carlos's mother, she cried. When I showed it to my therapist, she cried. When I accidentally showed it to the grocery store clerk while searching for a coupon on my phone, she cried too. The security footage from our neighbor revealed Madison's visits happened like clockwork. Every Tuesday and Thursday when Carlos and I were at work, she'd walk up our driveway, take the mail, sort through it in her car, and drive away with anything that looked important. Bills got through, junk mail got through, but anything personal disappeared. Birthday cards from relatives, Isabella's insurance cards, even her Social Security card had to be reordered. Then came the accidental text that changed our strategy. Madison sent it to me instead of Brittany again, this time complaining about having to maintain so many lies, about how exhausting it was to keep track of what she'd told to whom. She actually used the word exhausting to describe destroying my relationship with our father. That's when I knew the baby celebration was our moment. She was tired getting sloppy, and her pregnancy was making her feel invincible. Carlos and I spent hours planning our approach. We couldn't just dump everything at once. It had to be surgical, precise, each revelation building on the last until the full picture emerged. We needed witnesses, lots of them. We needed Dad to understand not just what happened, but why and how. We needed Madison to have nowhere to run, no story to spin, no way to make herself the victim. The plan was perfect, or so we thought. What we didn't account for was just how deep Madison's preparations went, or that she'd been planning her own reveal at the party. The collision of our two plans would create a scene that our family would talk about for generations, though not quite in the way anyone expected. The decision to expose everything at Madison's baby celebration wasn't made lightly. Carlos and I spent 3 weeks preparing, treating it like a military operation. We called it Operation Isabella's Justice, which Carlos thought was too dramatic, until I reminded him that Madison had literally erased our daughter from existence in our father's world. After that, he suggested we should have matching t-shirts made. Our first ally came unexpectedly. Cousin Patricia called me crying one night, drunk on wine and 30 years of resentment. Madison had apparently pulled similar stunts with her throughout their childhoods, culminating in Patricia's wedding photos mysteriously disappearing from family albums and being replaced with Madison's pageant pictures. Patricia was all in, bringing with her Uncle Tony, who'd started noticing discrepancies in Madison's stories about me. The photo timeline took 2 full days to create. Every single photo of my pregnancy, from the first ultrasound to Isabella's first smile, printed in high quality and arranged chronologically, each one labeled with dates and details that would be impossible to fake. The kicker was that many of them included timestamps from hospital equipment and medical records that Madison couldn't claim were photoshopped. Carlos's family became our secret weapon. His mother, a retired paralegal, helped us organize the evidence like a legal case. His sister, Rosa, a social media manager, created a digital presentation that could be pulled up on any phone or tablet. His brother, Marco, who worked in security, helped us retrieve and authenticate all the surveillance footage. The Ortiz family had adopted me completely, and they were furious about what Madison had done. The video compilation was the hardest to watch. Doorbell camera footage of Madison stealing mail, security video of her taking the invitations I'd asked her to deliver, even a clip from her own Instagram story where she'd accidentally filmed the hospital bracelet from Isabella's birth in her trash can. Miguel had enhanced everything, added timestamps, made it undeniable. It was 23 minutes of pure pure deception, captured in high definition. We found 12 pieces of Grandma Rose's jewelry listed on various resale sites. Miguel created a spreadsheet tracking each piece, its actual value versus Madison's listing price, and screenshots of Dad telling people I didn't want them. The total value she'd sold or tried to sell came to $93,000. That wasn't including the pieces she'd kept for herself, wearing them to family events while telling everyone she'd bought them with her blog earnings. The stolen recipes were documented meticulously. We had Grandma's original handwritten cards, photos of them in Madison's possession from her own social media, and side-by-side comparisons with her blog posts. The best part was a video Grandma had made 2 years before her death, explicitly stating the recipes were for both her granddaughters to share equally. Madison didn't know that video existed. Nobody did, until I found it on an old tablet in Grandma's things that Dad had asked me to go through. Practice runs were essential. Patricia pretended to be Madison, trying every possible deflection and excuse we could imagine. Uncle Tony played Dad, going through cycles of disbelief, anger, and disappointment. We rehearsed until our presentation was bulletproof, until every possible objection had an answer. Every potential escape route was blocked. It was exhausting. But Isabella deserved nothing less than complete vindication. The christening gown was our secret weapon. Grandma Rose's own christening gown from 1935, handmade Irish lace, passed down through 4 generations. Madison had told Dad it was lost in a flood that never happened, but I'd had it all along, carefully preserved, waiting for my daughter. Isabella would wear it to the party, a visual reminder of the heritage Madison had tried to steal. Carlos's cousin Rosa created a backup plan. If Madison somehow managed to spin the narrative, or if Dad didn't believe us, we'd go nuclear. Everything would be posted online. Every piece of evidence, every screenshot, every video. Madison lived for her online reputation. The threat of total exposure would be our insurance policy. We wouldn't even have to mention it. Just knowing we had that option gave us confidence. The humor in our planning came from unexpected places. Marco suggested we hire a mariachi band to play after the revelation, joking that nothing says, "You've been exposed," like sudden trumpets. Rosa wanted to create a bingo card for family members to mark off Madison's predicted excuses. Patricia actually did make one, with squares like, "I was protecting everyone," and "Olivia's exaggerating," and "hormones made me do it." She distributed them discreetly to trusted family members. 3 nights before the party, I couldn't sleep. Isabella was cutting a tooth. Carlos was stress-eating his way through our entire pantry, and I kept second-guessing everything. What if it backfired? What if Dad chose Madison anyway? What if destroying Madison's image destroyed our entire family? But then I looked at Isabella, at this perfect little person who deserved to know her grandfather, and I knew we had no choice. The morning of the party arrived gray and humid, like the universe was setting the stage for drama. Madison had texted me 3 times to make sure I was coming, each message dripping with fake sweetness. She wanted me there to see Dad fawn over her pregnancy while ignoring my actual child. What she didn't know was that 47 other people were coming specifically to support Isabella and me, all secretly informed by Patricia's midnight phone calls. The party was Madison's typical overdone affair. Pink and gold everything. A candy bar that cost more than most people's monthly groceries, a professional photographer, and even a videographer to capture what she thought would be her perfect day. The irony of her hiring someone to document her own downfall was not lost on me. Carlos whispered that we should ask for a copy later. When Dad asked when it would be my turn and I delivered that practice line about 7 months ago, the silence was deafening. Madison's laugh, high and forced, tried to break the tension. She actually said I was making a joke, that everyone knew I was childless by choice, focused on my career. That's when Isabella, my perfect daughter with impeccable timing, reached out and grabbed Dad's tie, looking him directly in the eyes and said clear as day, "Pop, pop." Dad's face went through a transformation I'll never forget. Confusion, recognition, realization, and then something that looked like physical pain. He reached out instinctively toward Isabella, then pulled back, looking at Madison for explanation. She was already talking, already spinning, saying I'd obviously coached the baby, that this was some sick joke, that I was trying to ruin her special day with lies. That's when Patricia stepped forward with the photo album, not dramatically, just walked over and placed it in Dad's hands, saying she thought he might want to see what he'd missed. The first photo was from the hospital, me holding Isabella minutes after birth, the whiteboard behind us clearly showing the date and time. 7 months and 3 days ago. While Dad looked at it, Uncle Tony pulled up the digital presentation on the outdoor TV Madison had rented for the party. The video started playing automatically, Madison's voice clear as day, from a doorbell camera. Dad doesn't need to know about Olivia's baby yet, let me have this first. The crowd gasped. Madison grabbed for the remote, but Marco had already disabled it. The video continued, showing her taking mail, throwing away invitations, telling relatives I was unstable. Her own words, her own voice, her own face clearly visible in every frame. Derek, Madison's husband, was standing frozen with his mouth open, looking between the screen and his wife like he'd never seen her before, which, in a way, he hadn't. Madison had been careful to keep him out of most of her schemes, probably knowing his genuine niceness would have been a liability. When the jewelry spreadsheet appeared on screen, showing pieces he thought Madison had inherited legitimately, he actually sat down hard on a decorative hay bale. Madison tried everything in her arsenal. She cried, but the Botox made it look insincere. She claimed the videos were deep fakes, but Miguel had included authentication certificates. She said I'd stolen from her first, but couldn't specify what. She even tried fainting, but Patricia's teenage daughter loudly said, "Oh my God, she's doing the thing from TikTok," and everyone realized it was fake. Madison's eyes snapped open in frustration, completely giving herself away. Dad hadn't said a word. He was still looking through the album, his hands shaking. When he got to the video still of Isabella's first word, with the caption explaining what she was saying, he made a sound I'd never heard from him before. Something between a sob and a roar. He looked at Madison with an expression that made everyone step back, then at me with such devastation that I almost felt bad for him. Almost. The food blog revelation came next. Grandma's video played on the screen, her warm voice filling the yard as she explained how she wanted both her granddaughters to share her recipes, to maybe restart the business together, to carry on her legacy with love. Then Miguel's side-by-side comparison showed Madison's blog posts, word for word stolen, even down to Grandma's little notes about adjusting for altitude or humidity. Someone in the crowd, I think it was one of Madison's mommy blogger friends, actually laughed when the mudslide cake disaster video played, then caught herself and tried to look serious, but the damage was done. Others started chuckling too, remembering all of Madison's cooking failures while she claimed to be developing these recipes herself. The woman who couldn't make box mac and cheese had been pretending to be a culinary genius with stolen recipes she couldn't even execute. Madison's final attempt at control was to announce she was in labor, sudden, dramatic, clutching her stomach. But Aunt Helen, who'd been an obstetrics nurse for 30 years, walked over, took one look at her, and announced to everyone that Madison was barely 7 months pregnant and showing no signs of distress besides embarrassment. She suggested Madison might want to sit down and stop making things worse for herself. That's when Dad finally spoke. His voice was quiet, controlled, and absolutely terrifying. He asked Madison one simple question. Why? Madison's answer to Dad's question revealed everything about who she really was. She said I'd always been his favorite before she was born, that I'd had 5 years of being the only one, that it wasn't fair. She actually stood there, caught in 47 lies, and tried to make herself the victim. She said I was prettier, smarter, that Grandma loved me more, that everything came easy to me while she had to fight for attention. The crowd's reaction was visceral. These people had watched me work 3 jobs to pay for college, while Madison got a free ride. They'd seen me nurse Grandma through her final months, while Madison was too busy with her influencer parties. They knew the truth, and Madison's attempt at revisionist history was falling on deaf ears. Someone actually said, "Are you serious right now?" loud enough for everyone to hear. Derek found his voice and asked about the jewelry. Madison tried to say she was saving it for their baby, but Rosa had already pulled up the online listings on her phone, showing them to Derek. The dates proved Madison had been selling them long before she was even pregnant. Derek's face went from confused to hurt to angry in about 3 seconds. He asked her what else she'd lied about, and Madison's silence was deafening. The catering clients started making themselves known. 3 were at the party, invited by Madison for networking. They all wanted to know if the recipes were really stolen. When they found out the truth, one immediately called her lawyer. Another announced she was canceling her contract, effective immediately. The third, a woman who'd been friends with Grandma Rose, actually started crying and apologizing to me for not knowing. Dad walked over to me slowly, like he was afraid I might run. He asked to hold Isabella, and when I placed her in his arms, she immediately grabbed his nose and giggled. He broke down completely. This 6'2" former Marine, sobbing while holding his granddaughter for the first time. He whispered apologies into her hair, promised to make up for lost time, told her about all the things they'd do together. The photographer, bless his professional heart, captured every second. Madison's friends started leaving, just quietly gathering their things and walking out. Her mommy blog followers were live streaming everything, and the comments were brutal. Someone had already created a hashtag, #Madison Meltdown. Her carefully curated image was crumbling in real time, broadcast to thousands of people who'd thought she was the perfect sister, daughter, and soon-to-be mother. Patricia's bingo card was completely filled. Madison had hit every single predicted excuse, plus some we hadn't thought of. She blamed hormones, claimed I'd poisoned everyone against her, said the family had always been jealous of her success, even suggested this was all an elaborate prank for content. Each excuse made things worse, digging her hole deeper. Patricia's daughter held up the completed card and shouted, "Bingo!" which broke the remaining tension as people actually started laughing. Uncle Tony revealed he'd been suspicious for months. He'd hired a private investigator after noticing discrepancies in Madison's stories. The PI had documented 16 instances of Madison lying about my whereabouts or availability. He had photos of her at my mailbox, records of her calling my workplace, even evidence that she'd tried to access my medical records illegally. He'd been waiting for me to come forward, not wanting to interfere if I wasn't ready. The legal implications started hitting Madison all at once. Theft of mail was a federal offense. Fraud regarding the jewelry was criminal. The stolen recipes and contracts constituted business interference. Someone mentioned that her actions regarding Isabella could be considered custodial interference since she'd prevented a grandfather from knowing his grandchild existed. Madison's face went from red to white as she realized this wasn't just family drama anymore. Derek asked for his mother's ring back. She'd given it to Madison for their engagement, but now he wanted it returned. Madison tried to say it was being cleaned, but Rosa had already found the online listing where it had sold 2 months ago. Derek's mother, who'd been quiet until then, stood up and announced that their prenuptial agreement had a fraud clause. Madison had signed it thinking she was so much smarter than everyone else. Now it would cost her everything. Dad announced he was changing his will immediately. Not out of anger, he said, but out of clarity. He'd been blind to Madison's nature, enabled her behavior, and failed to protect me from her. The family business shares he'd planned to leave her would go to Isabella instead, in a trust I would manage. The house Madison thought she'd inherit would be sold, with proceeds split between all grandchildren equally. Madison would get exactly what she'd tried to leave me with, nothing. Madison's final attempt at manipulation was aimed at me. She approached slowly, tears finally managing to fall despite the Botox, and said we were sisters, that blood meant something, that I couldn't really want to destroy her like this. She actually used the phrase, "after everything I've done for you," which caused such an outcry from the crowd that she stepped back. I told her she was right. After everything she'd done, this was exactly what she deserved. 5 months have passed since Madison's baby celebration became her public unmasking. Isabella just celebrated her first birthday with a party that had every single family member in attendance, including some we hadn't seen in years, who came specifically to apologize for believing Madison's lies. Dad arrived 3 hours early to help set up, wearing a t-shirt that said, "Pop Pop's Girl" with Isabella's picture on it. He'd ordered them for the entire family. Madison delivered her son 2 weeks after the disastrous party. Stress-induced early labor, though both she and the baby were fine. Derek filed for divorce the day after the birth, having discovered through the investigation that Madison had opened credit cards in his name and run up $60,000 in debt. He got full custody with Madison having supervised visitation. He says his son won't grow up thinking lying is acceptable. The jewelry recovery was remarkable. Once word spread in the vintage jewelry community about what Madison had done, dealers who'd bought pieces reached out to return them. Most sold them back to us at the price they'd paid Madison, taking the loss rather than profiting from theft. Grandma Rose's complete collection now sits in a safety deposit box, waiting for Isabella and any future cousins to be old enough to appreciate them. Madison's blog imploded spectacularly. The cooking disaster videos went viral as a compilation called "How Not to Cook Your Grandma's Recipes." Food Network actually reached out to me about doing a show about authentic family recipes and their stories. I said yes, with the pilot episode dedicated to Grandma Rose. Madison tried to claim defamation, but truth is an absolute defense. And we had everything documented. The catering business is thriving under my management. I kept my day job but run the business on evenings and weekends with Carlos's help. We hired 2 of Grandma's old employees who came out of retirement just to spite Madison. Our signature dish is now honest apple pie with a tagline about authentic family recipes. Madison sees our van around town constantly, a rolling reminder of what she lost. Dad and Isabella are inseparable. He picks her up every Tuesday and Thursday for adventures, which usually means the park or library, but to him might as well be Disney World. He's documenting everything, making up for lost time with photos and videos. He even started a private Instagram just for family to follow Isabella's growth. Madison isn't invited to follow it. The family dynamics have completely shifted. Patricia and I have become close friends, bonding over shared Madison trauma. Uncle Tony apologized publicly at Thanksgiving for not seeing through the lies sooner. Even Aunt Helen, who'd always favored Madison, admitted she'd been willfully blind to the obvious red flags. The family meetings that used to center around Madison now happen at my house, with Isabella as the unofficial mascot. Madison herself lives in a small apartment on the other side of town. She works at a marketing firm that didn't Google her before hiring, but certainly did after. She's kept the job, but lost the respect. Her social media presence is ghost towns of former glory. The mommy bloggers blacklisted her. The charity boards asked her to resign. The country club revoked her membership after the mail theft became public knowledge. Derek brings their son around for Isabella to meet her cousin. He's a sweet baby who looks nothing like Madison, thankfully taking after Derek's kind eyes and genuine smile. Derek and Carlos have become friends, bonding over their shared experience of Madison's manipulation. They take the kids to the park together while discussing how to ensure the cousins grow up close, despite everything. The legal consequences were mostly civil, not criminal, though the threat remains. Madison had to pay restitution for the jewelry, return the money from the stolen recipes, and compensate me for the lost catering contracts. It wiped out her savings, her blog income, and the secret account she thought nobody knew about. She kept asking how we found out about that one. We didn't tell her Mrs. Patterson saw her at that bank's ATM and mentioned it casually. Dad's relationship with me has transformed completely. He admitted to therapy that he'd favored Madison because she seemed to need him more, while I was always independent. He didn't realize that independence was a survival mechanism, not a choice. Now he texts me every morning, comes for dinner twice a week, and tells everyone who'll listen about his brilliant daughter and perfect granddaughter. It only took 32 years, but I finally have the father I always wanted. The most satisfying moment came last week at the grocery store. Madison was there with her son, and Isabella called out, "Pop, Pop," when she saw a man who looked like Dad. Madison's face crumbled as she realized Isabella talks about her grandfather constantly, that he's a regular part of her life, that the bond Madison tried to prevent is now unbreakable. She left her cart and walked out. The cashier asked if I knew her. I said yes, she used to be someone I knew. The extended family still talks about the party. It's become legend. told and retold at every gathering. Patricia's daughter wrote her college essay about it, titled, "The Day My Family Learned About Consequences." She got into every school she applied to. The bingo card was framed and hangs in Patricia's kitchen. Madison's failed cooking videos play at family gatherings when we need a laugh. Isabella is starting to walk now, toddling between furniture with determination that reminds me of myself. She says 6 words clearly: mama, dada, pop, pop, dog, no, and weirdly, juice. She's the light of so many lives, this little girl who almost didn't exist in her family's world. Every milestone she hits is celebrated by dozens of people who almost missed it all because of one person's jealousy.